Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out new episodes of the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. If you missed an episode or want to get more information about the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. Season 1 of the TV version of Building the Future is now streaming online at buildingthefutureshow.com. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Jose Lopez, co-founder and CEO of OnePay. Jose, welcome to the show.
Yeah, how's it going, Kevin?
Good, man. I'm excited to have you on the show. I think what you guys are doing is really interesting and kind of fascinating to me. But maybe before we kind of get into that, let's get to know you a little bit better and kind of cover your background. Maybe we'll start off with where you grew up.
Yeah, definitely, man. That's an interesting story. I was born originally in Monterrey, Mexico, so that's basically 3 hours south from Laredo, Texas.
Okay, sure.
Was born and raised there, learned to speak English there, and then just happened to come to the States by chance and ended up teaming up with a couple of folks here and, started working with OnePay, and here we are. So it's been an exciting journey, and
Sure.
A lot has happened, but it's a decision that I never regret, and I don't think I'll ever regret in my life.
Sure. Well, but you do have an impressive kind of educational background. Like you've been to University of Texas, you've been to Stanford. What did you kind of take in university?
That's an interesting story. So back to how I got here, I think I'll tell you a whole story of how I got here, and then
Sure, that's awesome.
UT, and then Stanford, and then everything from that. So there's this type of linear sort of like education that you take in Mexico. You go to high school, and then the high school has a college. So you're basically guaranteed a spot at their college, and you usually take that linear procession, and then you graduate, and then you get a job.
Okay.
Whenever I graduated from high school, I got in and enrolled as a chemical engineer.
Okay,
I
interesting.
didn't really like it. Yeah, we'll go through a couple of these, so that's the interesting part. I came in as a chemical engineer, then I found out that it was not a great fit. I was not liking the way they thought there, and I did not feel comfortable. At that time, security was a big issue in Mexico.
Sure.
So my father said, hey, look for opportunities out there. And after doing, some due diligence, I decided I wanted to apply to UT and a handful of others. In the end, I only ended up applying to UT. That was my only choice.
Okay.
So it was basically a one shot. Fortunately, after much drama, because some of my friends that applied with me did not get accepted, and I was sort of like the last guy to check the application status, I finally got in.
Wow, that's
so
awesome.
I got in. Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was a cool feeling, sort of like hearing those guys saying, "Hey, man, I didn't get in," and one of them had better grades than I did at the time. So I immediately thought, "Hey, bummer, I didn't get in. Let's see what's next." But whenever I got that email, great feeling. I can still remember jumping up and down in my kitchen.
Sure, that's awesome though.
But interesting thing, I got in as a computer science major,
Okay.
which was one of my hobbies whenever I was back in Mexico. After a couple of semesters, basically at the end of my sophomore year, I decided that it was that I wanted to explore more of the business economic side of things. That I did not see myself sort of like in the labor force as a computer science major. That was sort of like an existential sort of like moment that I had there.
Okay.
And that's when I switched off to economics with a double degree in economics and political science.
Okay.
I did a brief stint in Washington where I worked for Bank of America and then in the public sector. Then basically came back to Austin. And keep in mind that during this time, I was still actively, programming. I was still sort of like doing that on the side. So I was still getting those things going on.
Sure.
And during the transition between junior and senior year, that's where OnePay sort of like started getting that traction, getting built basically. So I graduated from UT, decided to stay with OnePay for a while. Then we got accepted into Stanford as fellows. where we basically specialize in driving excellence through innovation, basically. And it was a very interesting process. It was last year, and it was for a period of the fall semester, and it was a great experience. I mean, being able to be there and soaking in all this information, Palo Alto, San Francisco, that the ecosystem itself just breeds startup and breeds innovation, and learning to spot efficiencies, not only in how to scale a company, but in how to lead day by day,
Interesting.
organizations, and by day operations, you can make a difference. And I'll give you a quick example that I always love to give. You've probably seen that sometimes you get like free coffee, but you either can leave a tip or just grab the free coffee and go your merry way.
Sure.
There's a study that they did by this very famous Professor Sutton in Stanford, that they saw that if they put sort of like an art picture behind the coffee table with the free coffee and the tip that was of butterflies, people 20% would give tip, not give tip. But if they change that art to put a picture of eyes, the amount of people that tipped increased by 70%.
Wow.
Because those are small details that people notice, because people start feeling watched.
Right.
And that's very interesting. I mean, those subtle clues and subtle changes that you can adapt to sort of like drive behavior was just fascinating. And learning to apply those was definitely a pro in helping us scale, OnePay. So definitely a great experience, and one of the most cherished ones I have.
Sure. Well, and I think you bring up an interesting point, right? Because in a lot of cases, being in a startup is a lot of trial and error, right? And you see what works and what doesn't work. And in this case, they're swapping art. But, if you're building software or something, like you're constantly trying different interfaces or different landing pages or different workflows. Yep. And it's the same kind of thing, right? And you see what works and what doesn't work. Or what converts better, right? In some cases. And it's all about A/B testing and stuff like that. And I love that, right? And I think that's really fascinating. So let's kind of maybe get into what exactly is OnePay.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, just a quick note about what you said. I believe that's what it is. You have to have your metrics, and you have to iterate quickly according to what those metrics and what the feedback says.
Sure.
And if not, how are you going to stay, in the same spot? Moving into OnePay. OnePay is a financial platform that reduces monthly bill paying into a single payment.
Okay.
And then goes and finds saving opportunities for you by doing competitive shopping based on your plan and your usage. In a simple way, you pay one bill and you save money. Simple as that.
Very cool. So how did the idea kind of come to be?
It's been an idea that's been iterated a couple of times, and it all started back, like I said, when I was in between my transition between junior and senior year. Both David Dewey, which is the other co-founder,
sure,
we started seeing this problem and noticing more and more problems surrounding the bill paying experience, much like whenever you're in crutches, you notice everyone else that's in crutches, and everyone sort of like starts popping up. This is sort of like the same feeling.
Sure.
Once we spotted that problem, we started seeing everyone that was suffering with it, and we saw that there were two fundamental factors that were very important. One, there was a huge gap between getting reminded and actually doing. Those people that were reminded about, hey, you had to pay your bill today, they would see it on their smartphone and say, perfect, I'll do it later tonight. And they would forget, thus incurring a late fee. And that leads to American bill payers paying 36% of the time a late fee. That's a very high number. The second problem that we spotted was, and this leads a little bit more into a sort of like the lack of proper financial management, not because we don't want to, but because bill paying is tedious.
Sure.
But we also spotted that people were overpaying for what they were actually using.
Interesting.
They were paying, more data. They were paying more channels. They were paying, claims that insurance sort of like clauses that did not apply to their particular living. And that was between a range of $20 and $80. And this happened to 85% of online bill payers. So that's a huge number right there.
Wow.
So we saw these two sort of like base problems, and we started saying, okay, so what are the solutions out there? I mean, you have your bank, and then you have your software solutions, but so it appears that you have to sort of like have a structure, a complete sort of like three different strategies in order to complete everything that you need to do with bill pay. Because a lot of people use, an Excel spreadsheet, then they do paper checks, and then they do auto pay.
Right.
And also budgeting app, right? So it's sort of like this whole mess. And at the time we say, okay, let's just make it as simple as, I give a single payment to a person and they distribute that money. They actually take care of me, so they avoid late fees, they avoid overdraft fees for me, and they're constantly giving me for savings. And we started, going at it with that idea, started iterating. We completed an MVP, and the moment that we realized that we had something is whenever we convinced, I still remember the story, we convinced one of our first clients with a very, very poor interface and, just two college kids to sign up and pay his bills.
That's awesome.
He had no idea who we were, and he trusted us, and he's been our number one client ever since. And it's been great. So that was sort of like the catalyst. Okay, if I can convince this one guy, I can convince much more.
Sure. No, I think that's awesome. So I'm kind of curious. So you basically, how do I kind of go about getting started with you guys?
Definitely. It's a very simple process. It's a 3-step process. So
okay.
You go in and you register, simple as, your name, first name, last name, email, that's it.
Gotcha.
You good. Then you have to select any and all services you want to add with OnePay by adding online credentials. So you can choose, the energy, so utilities. You could use Time Warner Cable, then go for your phone with T-Mobile, then add Progressive Insurance. You can even add your apartment rent.
Okay.
You have an apartment, and the list goes on and on. You can even add loans and mortgages. The only thing that we do not do at this moment is credit cards due to compliance reasons.
Gotcha.
But once you add all of those services, the system will validate those for you, authenticate them. Once they're authenticated, the system creates a baseline, basically for all of your bills. And let's say that you pay $500 for all of the bills that I mentioned, okay, according to your historical usage. So we have an algorithm that basically takes your history with that service and uses variables such as outlier, seasonality, as well as trending to find the base.
Gotcha.
We add those bases together and we give you a single bill. You pay that bill at the beginning of the month, and then the system distributes the funds to your service providers and reports back to you. As simple as that.
Very cool. So how do you guys monetize the platform?
So the service, one of the cool things, it's a free service, of course.
Okay. Yeah.
We only charge whenever we find saving opportunities, and we charge a percentage over the saving opportunities, which aligns our mission perfectly with the user to find savings without the added effort.
Sure.
Right now, and for a limited time, we're charging 10%. That is set to increase to 25% by the end of summer.
Okay.
But so the way and that's for a period of about 1 year. So a quick example, so we can wrap our head around it.
Sure.
So with the 10% right now, let's say that we find $50 in savings for you. So instead of paying your monthly OnePay bill of $200, you're going to pay $155.
Gotcha.
Right? So you're saving the 50, but we're taking 10% of that. So you're getting 45 and we're getting 5. And that's for a period of 12 months. And
Gotcha.
after 12 months, you get it.
I think a lot of people, especially people that are busy, don't really have time to shop around or know that they could be getting a better deal, right? Like you guys must see this all the time.
Yeah, definitely. And it's very, very interesting because when you have to put things in perspective, because you say $20, $40, $50 a month. Okay, yeah, who cares? But
Sure.
let's think about this. That's $50. That's almost like $600. That's exactly $600 a year
Sure.
that you are saving. That's an Apple Watch right there. That's a trip. That's half of a plane ride to Paris.
Sure.
So it's that impact, that bottom line impact that we are concentrating on. And what we realize is that if we can help people pay their bills, we can create that fundamental financial base, and people can start building on top of that through good behaviors. So now they're saving, so they can actually make those savings something. Imagine the compound interest if you multiply those 600 over 5 years.
Sure.
So that's the impact. That could be $5,000 by 3 years. So it's those small changes that create that big impact that we're concentrating on.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. So I'm kind of curious to talk a little bit maybe about some security and kind of what you guys offer on that side, because I think that's got to be some hesitation from some of your users, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the departments that I lead. So I love talking about security.
Sure.
It's fascinating for me, and I think that it's not very well discussed in the general consumer sort of like stream out there. So I'll jump straight to it. At the beginning, we realized that two things were paramount. We had to make it easy to sign up, and we had to have security, because security leads to trust. And if a consumer can't trust you with what you're doing and how you're handling their private information, then you're not going to have customers, and you're not going to succeed. So early on, we decided to implement this mindset of security and this mindset of always doing things with that in mind.
Okay.
So we've implemented a lot of different practices around the office and policies before doing things that take this as sort of like a mantra. Quick example of that: we do thread penetration before writing a single line of code. So basically, that's whiteboarding exactly how we work from a code base and see, okay, where are my vulnerabilities? Where can information be compromised, and how do we mitigate with that?
Gotcha.
So by doing that, you analyze everything and see, okay, here, and here, and this is what we're going to do. So you exactly know before going in how you're going to do that.
Okay.
So that's how we deal with sort of like our code base and iterating securely.
Got you.
On the other side, we have, daily scans in terms of how our website is basically the status of it on a daily basis. So we know if there's been any type of entry in a log, any type of interest or weird type of request in the logs, and so we can address those. On top of that, we have double hashed and salted passwords, and what that means is, and I can create an example from this with LinkedIn.
Sure.
So the LinkedIn hack that I think it happened in 2012, but recently got sort of like attention by the media. The problem with that, and why it was so easy for them to get those usernames and passwords, was because they were only hashed, they weren't salted. So a salt is basically a four alphanumeric combination that gets parsed into the hash so that it creates a longer string of characters. It's basically a password for the password before you.
Right.
But that's how you explain it. So we double hash them. So we do this process twice before it gets into our database. Our database is then siloed. So if you get a single database, that information does not make sense. So long story short, we really do take any and all policies about how we store information, how we transfer information, how we deal with information very securely. And one thing I do want to say is that we never store bank account information that's stored by a third party that deals with our processing. So that also creates sort of like an extra filter for that most important information, which is bank account and credit cards.
Sure. No, I think that's awesome. And I think I love how you guys are really open with that. You even have like a section on your site about that and how you guys kind of handle that, right? Where I think a lot of companies don't really put it up front like you guys do. And I really respect the fact that you guys do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only way. You have to be transparent about how you're dealing with them to create that trust and to create that feeling that, hey, we're on your side. We're here to help you. We're here to take care of you, not only with your bills, but respecting you with your information. So that's the only way.
No, yeah, I totally agree. So I'm kind of curious to know, maybe let's cover a little bit more of kind of, the feature set and kind of maybe even if you want to mention anything that you guys are launching in the near future.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, there's a lot of exciting things happening on the background for us, and that it's been a lot of discovery and a lot of implementation, a lot of iterating to consumer feedback. We've actually been holding off on an update because we were sort of like testing it, and we wanted to make it absolutely beautiful for the user. But before I go into that, let's talk a little bit about the hidden features that sort of like exist within the OnePay world.
Sure.
Because when people think about OnePay, they think, okay, the name sort of like explains it all. It's a single payment to deliver savings. Great. So a little bit more. So by creating this single payment behavior, not only are you taking care of your monthly bill responsibilities, up front, but you're also budgeting intelligently because that's what's left for the rest of the month is discretionary spending.
Gotcha.
And you can actually decide when to use it and how to use it. You want to save, you want to, go shopping, maybe go out for dinner. You can decide what to do with that. So you're never surprised by that bill that you forgot about and then you have no money to pay with. Mm-hmm. So you're organized. So that's one of the hidden benefits about what we do. The next is some bills do not allow for you to pay with a credit card. With OnePay, we make that possible.
Okay.
And if you're intelligent about it, you can even use OnePay to get, rewards points on your favorite credit card, and even so you can actually complete that other half of the Paris flight that I was talking about.
Right.
So that's another cool one. And lastly, but not leastly, we have sort of like a savings feature called the piggy bank. So now you can put savings as an actual bill. So you can put money aside, on a goal or just for a rainy day, and know that it's stored in an FDIC insured bank account, the bank that's partnered with us.
Okay, interesting.
And you can, retrieve it anytime you want, but that's being, it's constantly growing. And the cool thing about that is we found that there's this behavior of having your bank account and you have checking and savings, but it's super easy to just transfer, money between those. And people have problems of like leaving their savings and not consuming it. So we sort of like hit the approach of you don't see it, you don't think about it, but it's still growing.
Sure.
And you make it a behavior as well because you're paying it on a monthly basis, and now it becomes a behavior. So it becomes and it boils down to all these like small different minuscule behavior changes that we're sort of like giving access to a customer that's going to help them improve their financial health. So that's what we're doing. And one thing that we're going to sort of like go about and release is we're going to create an open source IPA, so that other services out there can connect to our system and provide the one bill, one payment, one place service to the customers.
Oh, that's actually very cool, and could be really useful for a lot of people. So I'm curious though, how did you guys go about integrating with kind of these huge kind of organizations? Did a lot of them have kind of APIs and whatnot that you could integrate with, or did you have to contact them, or a little of both? Because that's got to be daunting for some people, right?
it's it was a very interesting undertaking, and it was about finding what was the best approach, because of course these are big companies, and of course
Sure.
they have APIs, but most of them limit their API calls and or do not give those APIs to anyone. They're not open source.
Sure.
So we found ourselves with a problem. Like, okay, so how do you approach this? Now there are several companies out there like Yodlee and Plaid and you name it that help you connect with the service providers, sort of like an aggregator of service providers.
Right.
But that doesn't work either, because for a startup that, started as a bootstrap startup, that's something that we can't afford.
Sure.
So we had to build a way to connect with service providers that was efficient, replicable, and standardized.
Got you.
So that's how we went about it, and it's been fun getting to see that come to life, because it hasn't been easy, but yeah, I mean, I'm happy to say that we are able to connect with over 300 service providers out there at this moment, and
that's awesome.
And that we're constantly adding more as requested by the user. So it's fun, and I know that it'll continue to be exciting.
Sure. Well, I assume too that once you contact some of these places and you say, I have this demand to access your data for my service, and and if you can almost generate them more business, they got to be open to kind of collaborating with you as well, right? Or put you in touch with a person you need to collaborate with, or their devs or whatnot. Correct?
Yeah, I would think so. It's very interesting, because we've had conversations with people that have dealt with them before, and they have certain thresholds that they respect and they abide by.
Okay.
But to create that sort of synergy will be definitely another undertaking in itself. It's a lot of service providers, a lot of different contracts, a lot of different negotiations that need to take into consideration. So something that will happen down the line, but something that we will have to sort of like weigh in the balance, because if we already have a way to do this, efficiently, then we have to see, hey, what's the cost benefit of doing this, right?
Sure, that makes a lot of sense for you guys. So you kind of mentioned you guys were bootstrapped. Are you guys still kind of bootstrapping? Did you guys end up kind of raising some money, or kind of how are you guys
we
funding
raised
this
money.
a bit? Okay.
Yeah, we were originally bootstrapped, and that was back when we were in college, and we started sort of like branching out from that. And after the Stanford fellowship, we were able to secure a seed investment that helped us grow our team, beautify our product, and get this UX and UI that we truly wanted, because that was one of the issues before. Is okay, we're bootstrapped. We sort of like have to make tough choices.
Sure.
About, okay, what do I do? Do I go back and take 2 months building this beautiful UX, or do I go by and get customers now? So we sort of like took that moment to say, okay, now we can do the UX we want, and now we can create the experience, the ideal experience that we want to get to our customers.
Sure.
So that's what we did. Of course, hired a lot, more people in, and you use those dollars to get marketing in the door as well, which has been incredibly important.
Sure. So I think you bring up an interesting point there, though, because I think a lot of people forget or don't realize, like, especially when you're in your early days, you are making trade-offs on certain things, right? And I think some people always think that it needs to be like perfect in their eyes before they launch. And it sounds like you guys obviously launched when you were like, obviously like had a version of a product that you guys could ship, but you still weren't 100% happy, and you were still kind of iterating and making choices on like, okay, well, we'll fix this down the road, or maybe we'll fix this now. Like you kind of, it's like a constant kind of, juggling a little bit to decide where you're going to take this thing, right? And I think that's important to mention to people listening.
Yeah, definitely. It's a balancing act.
Sure.
And one thing that we realized and that we have very present is that it's never going to be perfect. You can't go by perfect. You can't, sort of stop yourself from releasing everything by saying, oh, but it's not good enough, or it's not the way I want it to be. It's never going to get there, because we all want, better. It's always about better. So with that in mind, we just have to make it good enough by when we need it by. So we started releasing early versions of what we were doing with beta testers first, and then iterated from there, because sometimes you're so in the weeds, you're so focused on your product, and you're so close to it that you're blinded by it. That you forget to see things that other people notice, and you forget to see it from your customers' eyes. So having those people in and just opening the doors to them and creates a huge learning curve. It gives you sort of like a compass. So you can know exactly where to build, because you're not building. Because if you get a compass, you're not building just for the sake of building. You're building with a purpose. So I believe that it's not about being perfect. It's about creating something that's good enough and that's great.
Sure.
And that will help you get to the next good enough and the next good enough. And it'll continue to be that way. Because the customer is ultimately, and his or her feedback is what's going to help you get to that point.
Sure. No, I think that's really good advice. And I think a lot of people kind of forget about that, right? And they struggle with like getting it perfect and they never launch, right? And then it just goes nowhere. But I think that's really good advice. Is there anything else that you kind of get asked or tell people kind of all the time, that you've either learned not to do, or things that you recommend to people to do when they're doing their own kind of startup?
Yeah. And it's very interesting, because sometimes we get questions about our stack, or sort of like the technological side.
Okay.
And that's always a hard question, because there's no definite answer to in what language to build or what stack to use whenever you're building, because it depends on what you're using and what type and what you're going to use the service for. So that's always a hard question to answer. But I always say that if someone is thinking about what stack to use, they should go back in and grab not only their competitors, but similar services, and start digging. There are a lot of tools out there that tell you what type of stack was used to build certain products.
Even like browser add-ons too, right?
Yeah, Built With is a Chrome plugin that I use sometimes to find those types of information. You can find hosting, you can find the stack, what types of services are right on top of that. So you can use that and compare that, and then understand, okay, why are they using this? Okay, are they using PHP because it's easier to scale? There's a wide library of people that have been using this type of services. It makes more sense. You're doing an API, maybe Ruby is a better idea.
Sure.
Python is very flexible, very standardized in terms of its language, and very well is very flexible too. So it's about your particular situation from the technological side.
Sure.
On the other side is measuring. Most of the people that start a company nowadays are first-time founders, and I put myself in that bucket as well. And it's hard for first-time founders to sort of like decide where to focus first and how to measure. And those are two things that I learned early on that were very important. If you can't measure and if you can't focus, then you're going to sort of like be running in circles.
Sure. I think that's really good advice.
Yeah, because you need to establish, how, when, and what you're going to measure, and be very, very, very accountable with it. Hold people accountable to it. Say, okay, this is what, we're going to measure, I don't know, downloads. How many downloads did we get in a day? How many downloads did we get in a month? How many downloads did we get in, a quarter? That way you can compare what you are doing and see the effect it has on your actual product. So that's very important. That's number one. And number two is focus. And focus comes not only by understanding where you're going to, but by how you're doing so.
Sure.
So early on, and one of the things that we've been learning a lot over this past 6 months is about organizing our days. We basically decided to take a more proactive approach in terms of how we approach our weeks, how we approach our individual tasks and our roles.
Interesting.
So I adapted, theme days.
Okay.
And this is sort of like, this is a bit of a steal from Jack Dorsey from Twitter. And the way that those work is basically, okay, so Mondays, I do, my numbers. I check, the reports that I get, the KPIs, I do analysis, I do projections, I find all those stuff. And then, Tuesday is, investor reach out and talking to them, seeing, talking with the board members and, outreach for new investors. And sort of like the themes go on and on. Thursdays are my meeting days. I'm completely out in the field all day, and we're taking meetings, talking to people, coffees, et cetera, et cetera. So by being focused on what you do, you know exactly what's next. You're sort of like a well-oiled machine that's continuously going and pushing towards a goal. And another great advice is email. Email is just a horrible way to kick you off sort of like your groove and to distract you. And there's been studies that every time, a message or an email or a text comes in, it takes 23 minutes for you to go back to concentrating to full concentration. So that's about 30 minutes of your life that you're losing every time you're distracted with an email or with a text or with a Slack message. So it's about knowing how to shut those off. So I view my emails 3 times a day.
Okay.
It's morning, noon, and before I get out of the office. If something's burning, someone's going to call me. So that's how I approach things. And, hacks like that to help you sort of like kick things off and understand the process between the office. There's a ton more that we've been adopted, but this sort of like, this is the mantra and the sort of like the underlying thought is organize and theme your days.
No, I think that's really good advice. And I think, you almost have to do that. And maybe you can't necessarily, for everybody, can't just necessarily just take different days of the week to do specific things. But I think your point about email is very valid, at least to me. And like, I recently turned off my email notifications on my phone, and just so like I'm not constantly getting email notifications just when I'm out and about or even throughout the day. Like, I have it open in the browser, so I'm a little bit more I'm kind of more in the middle of what you're doing, where you only check it a few times a day. But I find in the evenings and weekends when, the email's still syncing in the background, I'm just not getting notified, then I can choose when I check it throughout the day. And maybe it is, like, especially on the weekend, I only maybe check it once or twice in a day, if at all. Sometimes I try to take, like, Saturday off. And I think just turning off the notifications of things that you find kind of the most annoying. Like, I deleted most of my social network stuff off my phone just so I'm not constantly getting notifications. And I think turning certain things off that you find kind of distracting, like you mentioned, can save you a ton of time and almost like save you from kind of getting burnt out a bit.
Yeah, definitely, because you're in reactive mode and proactive mode. So it's great. I mean, it has made a huge difference in my productiveness and how I approach my day. So
sure. No, I love.
I highly recommend it.
Sure, and I love when people kind of share those kind of tips and advice and things that work for them, right? And hopefully, other people try that kind of stuff too, or even one or two of those things, and it saves them some grief and they can kind of check out a little bit here and there. But we're kind of coming to the end of the show. Do you want to maybe end off with mentioning where people can find you guys online and any other social links you want to mention?
Of course, yeah, definitely. To get registered with OnePay or to learn more about it, you can just go to justonepay.com, and that's justonepay.com. Any concerns, any email, any comments, or any questions that they might have, particularly for me, my personal email is jesus@justonepay.com.
Perfect.
I have a very sort of like open door policy where, you know, I answer every email that comes through, because I feel that I would like that. So it's sort of like a golden standard rule. I'm following that. And, you know, social media at justonepay.com, and you can find us in Facebook as well as justonepay.com. So any comments or questions, please, you know, use social media. My personal Twitter is JLOPEZLOC. So follow me and, you know, stay updated on not only what we're doing, but we're constantly posting about financial literacy, you know, tips and tricks about how to improve your financial life besides, you know, using OnePay. So interested in, you know, how 401k works, how to budget, how to, you know, pay off debt, which one should you choose first. You know, you can go to a newsletter and get that type of quality information from there. So check it out.
Perfect, man. I love it. Thanks again for taking time out of your busy day to be on the show. I look forward to keeping in touch with you and kind of following you guys throughout the rest of the year and beyond.
Definitely. No, thank you for having us, and I'll talk to you later.
Sounds great, man. All right. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Thanks for listening. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.